Bungie has gone from a studio once lauded as a titan of the industry who could see and do no wrong, to what is quickly becoming the laughingstock of the industry, who have seen their reputation eroded and chipped away over the last few years. And I am talking about the upper management of Bungie here. The truly disappointing thing is that Bungie is not a unique case. They are merely the most recent example in an industry riddled with the virulent infestation of greed. Hello everybody. I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and let's talk about the Bungie layoffs. In a news article posted to Bungie.net, CEO Pete Parsons announced the layoffs of 220 roles which will be eliminated, to quote, representing roughly 17% of our studio's workforce. This is coming off the back of, even in his own words, in this news article, link in the description down below, the final shape, the latest expansion for Destiny 2, they even called it a success here. As reported by PC Gamer, Steven Dortillo reported in a GameFile newsletter that former employees alleged that said cuts were planned even if the final shape did well. So good or bad, these cuts were going to happen either way. There's been a lot of talk about modern gaming. A lot of us have seen IPs and franchises and even studios that we grew up to love that provided some of the most enriching and enjoyable gaming experiences we've ever had the pleasure of playing. We have seen these studios erode and decay over time, and it can be for numerous reasons, but a lot of them tend to find their common source back at a singular point: greed. And more often than not, bad decisions made by upper management to which the developers themselves have to suffer the consequences. Pete Parsons, in that Bungie article, to quote, is working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12%, into SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment, over the next few quarters. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to save a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by the reduction in force. And I kid you not, this article is borderline meme-worthy, and just lays out bad decision after bad decision. For instance, to quote the article on Bungie.net, for over 5 years, it has been our goal to ship games in 3 enduring global franchises. Remember that number. To realize that ambition, we set up several incubation projects, each seeded with senior development leaders from our existing teams. We eventually realized that this model stretched our talent too thin too quickly. It also forced our studio support structures to scale to a larger level than we could realistically support, given our 2 primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. They wanted 3 big franchises. They were gunning for Destiny and Marathon to be 2 of them, and they wanted a third, but had several projects for that. So either they wildly overestimated the workload they could reasonably accomplish, or, in my opinion, what I think is correct, the people making these decisions have no comprehension about how the game industry works. Because the very next paragraph, to quote, additionally, in 2023, our rapid expansion led headlong into a broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the games industry, our quality missed with Destiny 2 Lightfall, and the need to give both the final shape and Marathon the time needed to ensure both projects deliver at the quality our players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red. They admit that they expanded too quickly, which is an all too familiar concept, not just in gaming but in tech overall, with the massive boom we saw after 2020 with COVID. But as anyone with a pulse could tell you, this growth was obvious because everyone was locked in their homes, bored out of their mind. So of course people would try gaming, or they would try anime, or they would try something to entertain themselves. But once that is over and people no longer had to live in those conditions, the numbers would go back down. Maybe they'd be higher than they were before entirely, but to continually expect that level of growth without end, to me, is the ultimate representation of not understanding the video game industry, where you only look at the numbers devoid of any context behind those numbers, and then when realistic trends start to happen, you are blown completely off balance and are left scrambling to pick up the pieces. And who ends up getting the blame? Who ends up suffering the consequences for these bad decisions? The people making these bad decisions or the development? I'll let you hazard a guess as to why 220 roles are now eliminated at Bungie. We could get into corporate greed, which is a tale as old as time. We could get into the, as PC Gamer claims on their website, to quote, claims that CEO Pete Parsons spent $2.4 million on vintage vehicles over the past 2 years, end quote. By the way, Pete Parsons being the person who wrote the Bungie.net article I've been reading. But again, this isn't a surprise. Greed is rampant in industry, and it's especially rampant in the video games industry, where people time and time again clearly don't understand the industry they're trying to pour money into, and instead of the people making these bad decisions that anyone with a pulse could tell you was bad, it falls on the developers to suffer the consequences of another man's poor decisions. I will paraphrase former Nintendo CEO Iwata. How can you reasonably expect developers to do a good job and to create a good game when they're constantly worrying about whether or not they're going to have a job tomorrow? And I would also add, how can you expect developers to create a good game sustainably when the reality of the situation is if they do bad, they'll get laid off, but even if they do good and the game is a massive success, like the final shape was, they'll still get laid off. What's the incentive? The letter announcing their departure on Twitter will be kindly written. What's the incentive here? How is this sustainable? How can you ask the developers that remain to do a good job, to have passion, and to devote themselves to the games and the stories you want to make and expand on in the future? How can you reasonably ask them to stay on board when you yourself have shown absolutely zero loyalty? You can't reasonably ask someone to be loyal to you when you time and time again show you are absolutely not loyal. And the sad thing is, this is business. A tale as old as time. This shouldn't surprise anybody, because what Bungie did is not a new thing. It's not revolutionary, it's not innovative, they're not unique in this. It's another data point on a plot quickly being filled up by the industry on the whole. A more fundamental question should be asked. Why should any consumer have faith in Bungie at this point if they clearly don't even have faith in themselves and are removing the people that create quality, well-received products in favor of retaining people who make unpopular, unwise, and just flat-out bad decisions? It is a shame to see a once titan of the industry like Bungie be reduced to this pathetic state by greed. I swear, the more you look into this, the dumber it is. Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier is also reporting, to quote, in a tweet, Destiny 3 was not cancelled because it was never in development. For people familiar, Bungie did some very early work on a spin-off project called Payback, but they cancelled that a while ago. I'll have a story tomorrow with more info. And you combine that with the reports coming out that Destiny 2 is not going to be doing expansion packs in the future. Instead, they're going to do, to quote Destiny Bulletin on Twitter, lighter and smaller content packs instead of expansions. So what is the end goal? To create negative hype for Destiny? Like, what's going on here? Because it's also being reported that the final shape has sold fewer copies than Lightfall, to quote the Game Post, who are reiterating what Stephen Tortillo reported in a GameFile newsletter, to quote, who cited a former Bungie employee as the source. For those who don't know, Lightfall was highly anticipated as an expansion for Destiny 2, but severely underdelivered and was poorly received. It's just fumble after fumble after fumble for Destiny. And even when they do something right with the final shape that is extremely well received, it's immediately followed up by the news of the layoffs, and then news that Destiny 3 was never in development, and that they're done doing expansion packs and instead going to do, like, smaller content drops. I've always struggled with trying to get into Destiny. I have absolutely no desire to do that at this point. They have successfully created negative hype for the future of not only Destiny, but Bungie on the whole. Because if this is how they've treated Destiny, who has been their bread and butter, their identity, for pretty much a decade at this point, what hype is there for Marathon? What aspirations can you set for that game? As a consumer, like, there's just none. What optimism can you have? What hype can you have for a game that you know is likely not to be led well? To not have good decisions made for it time and time again? again. It's baffling. It's utterly baffling how this keeps happening. How poorly run must a game be if, according to Newzoo, it ranked 5th in revenue. It was the 5th highest revenue generating title for June 2024. How poorly run do you have to be where you can have that success and still not be successful? How is this not a failure of management? You either mismanaged, over-budgeted, or had unrealistic expectations. All of those things stem from incompetence at the management positions. But everyone else suffers for it. Welcome to modern gaming. The Bungie we knew of the Halo days is long gone, but every time they try and reinvent themselves, and even may successfully do, their efforts are undercut time and time again by the same old demon rearing its ugly head. Corporate greed, a tale as old as time, and one I highly doubt we will be rid of anytime soon. While Bungie may not be unique in this regard, if anything, it makes it more disappointing. Don't feel a shred of loyalty to a company that has no loyalty to either you nor its own. So thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified for the upload and stream in the future. And let's all go play some good games, shall we? Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again.